I'd like to call the order of the Milan Area Schools Board of Education regular meeting for Tuesday, May 20th, 2025. Would everyone please rise as you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you to everyone attending this evening, as well as those who will be watching the recording. All board members are present. We will start with communications and community engagement. This is the time for public comment. A reminder that this meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public meeting. There are 2 times for public participation during the meeting as indicated in the agenda. When addressing the board, you will be asked to state your name. The board determines the amount of time granted to individuals or groups to speak. Each person shall be allowed to speak for up to 3 minutes. Board members may question speakers but are not obligated to answer questions or make statements or commitments in response to issues raised by the public. In general, such items will be referred to the superintendent for advisement, investigation, study, and/or recommendation, or designated as future agenda items for board consideration. Are there any students who'd like to address the board? Are there any public members who'd like to address the board? All right. We'll move on to routine matters for approval. I need a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of May 7th, 2025.
Motion by Pryor.
Support by Gutierrez.
So moved and supported to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of May 7th, 2025. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, so moved and supported to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of May 7th, 2025. Ms. Murray?
Thank you. Murray, yes. Pryor?
Yes.
Sislo?
Yes.
Burdette?
Yes.
Farrell?
Yes.
Gutierrez?
Yes.
Heika?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Next on to board organization issues. I need a motion. We need to have some discussion first in regards to the WISD biennial election resolution. So at the last meeting, we chose our elector as Ms. Gutierrez and our alternate as Ms. Pryor to be our representative for the WISD biennial election. And now we need to tell them who we're going to support for them to vote for. So the candidates were put into our material to review. So there's 2 candidates for 6-year terms: Diane Hockett, Eric John Roberts, Mary Jean Tremonton, and then there's a 1 candidate for a 2-year term, Dorcas Mussolini. So we'll open it up for discussion as far as who we want to represent for the WISD. Yeah, Ms. Pryor.
I reviewed the candidates and I would like to support Diane Hockett as the candidate for a 6-year term. She has a wealth of experience both in local schools and already on the WISD board. I've seen her in action. I think she serves well and I think she'll continue to serve well, and that would be my choice.
All right. I think we are able to choose 2 of these. So, we can definitely start with that. So, are there others? Ms. Gutierrez.
I would just like to second Ms. Pryor's recommendation. As she mentioned, Ms. Hockett is currently on the board. I also serve on that board with her, and just in participating in that activity, it's clear she has such a wealth of knowledge and historical knowledge that is really an asset to that board. And so I was delighted to see that she would like to run again. I also would like to remind our board here that Mr. Roberts, I think was his last name, attended our meeting here. And so just to put that in context, I appreciated his attendance here and what he shared with us as well. But I definitely support Mrs. Hockett.
Others? I would echo Mr. Roberts. I mean, he's emailed us several times. He runs learning for the Open Meetings Act. He's been here. I also support Ms. Hockett. I know she's, like you guys have stated, she's definitely involved and has been attends many trainings with MASB. So Any others? So it sounds, yeah, Mr. Farrell.
Yeah, I just want to state that I support the two candidates that have been mentioned so far.
All right. Any others? And then obviously for the 2-year term, I don't know of anybody else that we would want to put other than Miss Musili. All right. So I think I'm hearing that I will take a motion to approve the WISD biennial election resolution as included in attachment A, which would include a vote for Ms. Hockett and Mr. Roberts for the 6-year term and Ms. Musili for the 2-year term.
Moved by Farrow.
Support by Burdette.
It's been moved and supported to approve the WISD biennial election as included in attachment A to vote for Ms. Diane Hockett and Mr. Roberts and Ms. Musili. Any other further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Murray?
Pryor,
Yes.
Sislo,
Yes.
Burdette,
Yes.
Farrow,
Yes.
Gutierrez,
Yes.
Heika,
Yes.
Murray, yes, and motion carries 7-0.
All right, next up, we move into strategic plan business in the area of finance and operations. We have the first reading of many budgets, the budget amendments for this fiscal year, as well as the preliminary budgets for next fiscal year, 2025, 2026. And we will start, and a reminder, this is the first reading where we'll hear information from Ms. Hendricks and Mr. Gearbaugh in regards to these budgets. And we'll have time to ask questions this evening, and as well as up until we vote on these at the first meeting in June. So with that, we will start with the first, the attachment B, the first reading of the 2024-2025 general fund budget amendment. Ms. Hendricks or Mr. Gearbaugh? Ms. Hendricks. Ms. Hendricks.
In front of you, you all have a packet that contains one packet of white and one packet of lavender budgets. We are going to be looking at the white ones first. Those are the amendments for the current year budget. Attachment B, the general fund, is your first document in that packet. You can see that the first column of numbers on here are the budgets as approved by you in January. The second column represents the changed budget that I am proposing. The last column shows the increases or decreases to the columns mentioned. As you can see, we are increasing our revenues by $744,000. We are decreasing our expenses by $9,900. So for this budget, it would be a positive impact to our budget of $754 or $54,000. I am proposing with this amendment that at the end of the year, we will end the 24-25 school year with a fund balance of $2,652,579, and that would be a 7.5% fund balance. If you look at the second page, there's a breakdown of what makes up the major items that make up the changes to both the revenues and expenditures. I decreased our Filter First grant award. The monies are good through the end of next June, and I don't foresee us spending the whole allocation, so I'm decreasing it by $102,000, which is the grant with offsetting revenues and expenditures, first item on the list. We are increasing revenues by about $800,000 due to adjustments to our state aid payments for ORS purposes. The Office of Retirement Services gives us money on a quarterly basis for 2 of our sections, and I have brought the budgets up to account for the third and fourth quarter payments. It also includes monies that were not in the January amendment for the MIPSers health care reimbursement, and that is the money that the state is giving us to pay back our employees the 3% that they're paying in for retiree health care. We had a good year as far as interest was concerned, so I'm increasing our budget by 40,000. There are a number of other items in the revenues to get us to that 744,482. I'm reducing our expenditures by the grant that I have mentioned before. I'm doing a reduction to our textbook budgets for this year only because there was money left in those accounts. With this amendment, I look at most of our regular expense accounts, and if we are not at a point that I think we're going to be spending it all, I do reduce it down. So when you see the miscellaneous adjustment line on here, that encompasses a large number of accounts. I didn't think you wanted to know that I was reducing something by $150. But we did have a couple major expenditures. Since the last amendment, we had to replace the compressors at the high school pool for $42,000. We had a high school boiler replacement for $55,000, and I'm including the employee retiree payouts that were not known in January. So that is a very quick summary of the general fund amendment. Does anybody have any questions?
If we did have sinking funds available at this time, we would be able to pay for the pool compressors and the boiler replacement out of the
Yes,
sinking fund. If we did.
because they are actual replacements of the equipment, yes,
Okay.
we would.
But just, we haven't received any of that revenue from that
Yes,
yet, because it hasn't been.
In talking to both our legal representation and our auditor, we could start spending our sinking fund monies right now, according to our lawyer. According to our auditor, if we start spending them, we will end up having a negative fund balance in an account. So we would have to do a corrective action plan for that. So I spoke with Mr. Gearbaugh, and I'm not advocating that to be an option at this time.
To add that, starting July 1st, you're going to notice we don't have a budget amendment setting up the sinking fund account. We could have done that, but that budget would have been in deficit, and we would have had to done a deficit elimination plan. That's not something we're interested in doing. You are approving a preliminary budget for the sinking fund starting July 1st. So starting July 1st, we could start to use sinking fund money to pay for these types of things that occur, because you're going to get income into that account by the end of the year, so that budget would never go deficit. So yes, you have $90,000 there that if those things happened next year, you could pay for them with sinking fund dollars.
Thank you. Other questions regarding general fund amendment for this year?
Just a brief comment that we are projecting a fund balance of 7.51 at this point. And when we proposed the budget, we were anticipating a 5.3% fund balance. So a little bit of an improvement, but hold tight for the next one.
And it's important to remind that the board desires to be at least a 10% fund balance. When we get around 5%, that's when the state comes knocking on the door. And then when our auditors have talked to us, they prefer to look at days like cash on hand instead of fund balance. So, all right. Any other?
Yeah, I will add to that conversation. As you know, we usually have some funds that we have in lines to protect them that then become available at audit time. When I look at this, if you look at the expenditures of 35 million, that means $350,000 is a 1% change in fund balance. So I'm not going to say that we will see as much as we have in the past, because we have tightened some of those lines down tighter than we normally do. I think there will be some recovery. I could see us getting that fund balance to somewhere between 8 and 8.5% by audit time. if we don't have any more major crises in the next 30 days.
I know, right? That was terrible. I have, I just want to make sure I understand this 802,000 increase in revenue from MIPSers. Is that the money that we received in lieu of the per pupil account, the per pupil amount, or is that something different?
Portion of that is for the per pupil. Our MIPSers numbers have fluctuated kind of all year, which is not uncommon. But the majority, or a big chunk of that, is for in the fall when the state approved their budget. They said that employees who have been paying 3% out of their paycheck into the retirement system for healthcare in retirement, that pot has been fully funded, so the employees no longer need to do that. However, the way the legislation was written and the way ORS operates, we couldn't just stop taking it out of Krista's check. We had to continue to take it out of Krista's check, send it to ORS, and then the state gave us about $250,000 back to pay Krista back the 3% that she paid in. So in essence, it's a wash, but it is a large chunk of ORS money that is coming back to the district.
Do you know what what portion of this 802,000 is the 3%?
250,000.
Okay.
There are multiple sections in the budget. They're in the 147. So there's 147A, 147A4. There's and it all deals with MIPSers, and some of this is that decrease that they guaranteed us,
Right.
but we didn't know what that guarantee was worth because they weren't really telling us whether it was based on last year's salaries or based on this year's salaries. And so we tried to estimate based on what we got in a few state aid payments, because they were telling us, well, you might get in every state aid payment, you might not, we don't know. So in the January amendment, we put in what we thought was going to be,
Sure.
and we've actually gotten more than what we anticipated. So that's some of this $800,000.
Michelle, if you would like, I can provide a breakdown to the board of that 800.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I just wanted to know if it was a huge chunk or not. And then, so a comment for the public, or two, I guess. We should explain to everyone what MIPSers is because we're using that acronym.
It
And
is-
I'm going to get the acronym wrong, so I'm going to rely on you. Even though they're a huge client of my employer, I'm going to get the acronym wrong.
MIPSers is the Michigan Public School Employee Retirement System.
Right. And so that is the system that pays for the pension and the retiree health benefits for retired state employees, of which the teachers are included in that system. Then can you tell me where the other, so there's a difference between the 802,362 and then the 803,478. Maybe I'm just looking at this wrong and I'm sorry.
The 803,478 is made up of a number of different changes.
Okay.
So there's a couple smaller things in page 1. I'm just showing you the big ORS piece on page 2.
Okay. And then I want to remind the public that last year in the state budget, non-charter public schools, they treated charter schools, even though they're supposed to be public schools, I don't believe they are, but while they're supposed to be public schools, they treated them differently in how they paid, how they paid them money for students. They still got a per pupil allowance. We did not. What the state did is that they relieved some of the burden we have in paying into MIPSers, and that's what we're talking about tonight, right? Okay.
That's
So-
also going to be critical when we get into next year's preliminary
Yes,
budget.
and so I
We're
wanna
gonna have
make
a
sure-
conversation about that when we get
Yes,
there.
so I want to make sure everyone understands that there were some charter schools who received more per pupil funding last year than their other public school counterparts because of the way the state did the budget. We can all have a huge discussion on whether that's right or wrong. I think from my comments, you all know how I feel about that. But I just want to make sure that that's where that money was coming from.
All right.
I'm done.
Any other questions? And again, we'll have time to ask questions in between here in the next meeting. Next up is number 2, the 2024-2025 debt funds amendment. That is an attachment C. First reading, Ms. Hendricks.
As you will see, this is a 3-page document. The first page is a summary of the two debt. As a district, we have 2 debt funds. We have a 2018 and a 2019 debt fund, both of which are repaying both of which are refundings of debt that we had taken out in 2002 and 2009. We are also repaying the state for borrowing in order to make debt payments. All of that is reflected in this document. So the top page is the summary of both pages combined. The other 2 backups are just each individual debt. There are slight adjustments due to the amount that we had to pay back to the state due to some tax payments that I didn't know initially at the time of the budget 12 months ago. This is pretty much the standard. We very rarely make major swings in this final amendment.
This is pretty much math.
Yeah.
This budget is really truly just an in and out.
Yeah.
Right. We
Yeah.
get our tax collections and we pay the debt that we owe. It has no bearing on the general fund or operating of the district. And it is important that, and I appreciate Krista pointing that out, when you see we have 18 and 19 debt funds, the first thing that's going to come to mind is we didn't do a millage in 18 or 19. But if you remember, we refinanced the 02 debt in 2018 because we got a lot better interest rate, and then we refinanced the 09 debt in 2019. So that's why they're listed as those years. Those are the years that we refinanced those debts. So that's a good point to make. But yeah, this is really an in and out budget. It has no effect on the operations of the district. And our goal is that by 2034, these aren't needed because all the debt will be paid off.
Any questions?
Is it possible to report on these, the amount of the debt load too, just so you get an idea of where you are and how that has changed from year to year?
I can provide that information.
Thank
To
you.
make sure that the board has that information for each of the debt funds.
Thank you.
Any others? All right, we're going to the 2024-25 food service budget as an attachment D. Ms. Hendricks.
This is another one that there are very few changes between the adopted budget that you adopted last June and this amended budget. We are experiencing and kind of continue to experience a large growth in our fund balance in this account. And that is due pretty much all to the fact that all students in Michigan eat free. We are currently working with the food service company to spend down our excess cost from last year, but I foresee us having an excess cost issue again this year. We are looking at replacing chillers, coolers, anything.
Walk-in
that is-
fridges, walk-in freezers, garbage disposals. And I know garbage disposals sound silly, but when you put a garbage disposal in a kitchen, it's like $15,000 to $20,000 because it's the whole stainless steel surround and everything. Basically, because this is federally funded, they don't like to see you with a fund balance over a certain percentage. And all kinds of districts are dealing with this. Because it's free food for every student, our usage factor has gone up tremendously. And so that's why we're bringing in a lot more revenue. While we did increase salaries of our food service folks some, we don't want to do that by too much, because then if we lose the free food for all meals, we can't afford to pay the staff. So that's why we're trying to use this on some one-time expenses and some updates in the kitchens that we need. We also are getting a couple new steamer ovens and just getting our kitchens up to snuff, because my fear is that we could lose that free meals for all, and then we've got to make sure that we can settle back into a normal food service budget. So we are working diligently. This is one of those crazy things where you've got money to spend in your left pocket, but you need money to spend in your right pocket and you can't do it. But we're gonna use it wisely and we're gonna get our kitchens up to snuff when we have the ability to do that.
Any questions? Right. That brings us to the 2024-25 student school activities budget as an attachment E. Ms. Hendricks.
By the title, you can tell this is student activity money. It's all, basically it's internal school accounts. So every month you receive balance sheets for the 4 building internal account funds. That's the transactions in those, on those balance sheets are what makes this up. We had to start, I think about 3 years ago, reporting this as a district expense. It now shows up in our audit. We had to have an adopted budget. I think we're getting kind of to the point where I'm able to say that about 550 to 600,000 is our regular activity. In the beginning, we were coming out of COVID. We had all sorts of different things, so I wasn't able to come up with a comfortable number. Right, with the last couple of years, we've been in the $500,000, $600,000 ballpark. It's money that is brought in for,
It's like clubs.
it's clubs, it's the class of 2025, it's
Any fundraising.
any
activities.
fundraising that anybody does.
Donations for winter coats. I mean,
Yeah.
there's all kinds of accounts. Athletics is in this at the high school level and middle
So
school level.
it's not money that the district uses as part of its general fund. However, they are considered district dollars and have to be treated the same way. They fall under the same, what you're allowed to spend the money on, all of those criteria have to be met in the internal accounts along with the general fund accounts. But we keep them separate because I want the high school to have control over their accounts, or the elementary school to have control over their accounts.
Any
And
questions?
I just want to make clear too, these are not booster accounts, right? These are, so like for the swim team, for example, they have an account here where money can go in, but the booster program is separate.
Correct.
Okay.
Some of our, I will add to that, some of our smaller teams that don't have full-blown boosters do use their internal account for all of their funding mechanisms. But we do have some teams that have this account and then have a booster group that's separate.
For it to be an internal account, a district official, a district person has to be in control of it. So the swim boosters are run by an outside body. But there might be a swim account at the high school that is overseen by the coach, by the building principal, by the athletic director. So the booster side of it is completely separate from this.
I noticed that the fund balance is also pretty high on that one. Are we just trying to keep that as high as we can, or is that considered high in the same sense as it is for like a food budget?
Their fund balance is, they're treated a little bit different. It is a fund balance. But when we started, they had about that much. So if they have if coming off of COVID, we weren't bringing in a lot of money, but we might have been spending more, their fund balance would have adjusted at that point. But they're pretty consistent on what they bring in and what they spend. But those funds are also used, like the building principals have a pot in there, and they use that money to buy supplies for classes, something above and beyond what the general fund would use or would normally purchase. So we don't touch that fund balance. It's
Right.
truly broke into 4 different accounts. The high school with the most activity also has the most money. But some of the smaller elementaries have maybe $60,000-$70,000.
Something that's important to remember is each of those internal accounts is made up of multiple other accounts. And those teams have to keep some money because the soccer team might want to buy their uniforms at the beginning of the season, but they haven't done their fundraiser yet. Right, so that's why the in and out is normally just about the same, and they all just have a carryover so that they can use it at the beginning of the season, then fundraise towards the end of the season, and just kind of gets into that pattern. Does that make sense, Gabe? Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, now we will move on to 2025-2026 preliminary budgets. We will start with the general fund budget and attachment F. Ms. Hendricks.
We have now moved on to the lavender calming colored budget.
Nice.
So you will see on here, the first column of numbers is the budget we just went over for general funds. The next column is our preliminary budget, and the final column is any changes to, from the final to the preliminary. You will note that we're starting with an estimated fund balance of $2,652,000, but I'm projecting that we're gonna end with 46,000 if things don't change. If you look at page 2, I am listing the assumptions that we've made in building this budget. We assumed a foundation allowance adjustment of $400 per pupil, which is what the governor recommended in the House and Senate. We're not that far higher, or that much higher. We assumed a drop in pupils, 38 students, but from our February 25 count to our projected October count. We are looking at reduction in ORS revenue. So Michelle, this might answer some of the question you had earlier. Last year we received $789,000 in section 147A4, which was the piece to offset our foundation lack of increase. That at this point has been eliminated. So I have to take that out of our budget. I have to remove I am removing 147C2, which it was a one-time ORS MIPSers deposit. The ironic part is sometimes one time isn't one time, but I have to pretend it is because I don't know what the future holds for it. And that's $329,000, and I am removing $250,000 for section 147G, which is that 3% payback. I have reduced our Act 18, for Act 18 payments from the ISD, we get 5 a year. And in December, we potentially get a extra payment. I used to not include any of that in here because we never knew if it was going to happen, but we have started including it. However, I did reduce the amount because I never know what that amount's going to be. I partially budgeted for reductions in our 29.7, which is enrollment stabilization from the state, 22L, which is district transportation costs, and 147C is the MIPSers rate stabilization. It's an in and an out. They give us the money in our state aid. 5 days later, we turn around and write a check back to the state. So it's going to be reflected both on the top and the bottom. It's a reduction to the revenue, but it will also be a reduction to the expenditures. For expenditure budgeting, I proposed a flat wage increase, no increase to any wage budgets.
Just real quick though, but this would include the regular increases that are in the contract?
Yes,
Okay.
if there is an increase in the contract, so hourly staff have steps. I gave them the steps. There are guaranteed point parts in the MEA contract. I have brought everybody up to their guarantee. It's just above and beyond those contractual guarantees.
Okay.
I have not included.
Thank you.
I am budgeting health insurance premiums based on the new state hard cap numbers. We do have that information. They did go up slightly from last year. Retirement rates, we were supposed to see a big savings, which is why we got that 147A4 up on the revenue side, because they were gonna pay down the cap, it was gonna be lower. Our retirement rate is made up of two parts. One part was reduced, and the part that pays for retirees' health care went up to offset the 3% that the employees don't have to pay. So for some employees, there is a substantial decrease in their retirement rate. If they're in the defined contribution plan and they're not taking insurance in retirement, we did experience a large decrease in the rate. For those of us who are not in those plans, we saw about a 1.5% decrease to the rate. So it was a decrease, but it was not the savings that we were promised last fall. And then with the loss of the 147A4 money, we truly did see a loss in the retirement area. I eliminated 4 certified staff positions. They were all vacated due to, not all, they were vacated due to resignations or retirements. I did reduce, in conversations with Mr. McMahon and Mr. Gearbach, we reduced the building supply budgets. Every building administrator was given what their allocation was, and they were able to tell me where they wanted that money, but the numbers did go down from last year. Some of the expenses that I built up this past year, like for the boilers, for the condensers, some of those numbers were taken out of budget, so that reduced budget lines down. I did move the school bus purchase, which normally would be reflected in the general fund, and the Chromebook, our annual Chromebook purchase. You will see numbers now in our sinking fund for next school year to cover those expenditures. And that's it. That's the ugly part of the budget.
I want to make a few general comments before any questions get asked. So if you go to the first page, the first thing that you're going to notice is we're basically projecting to use about the same amount of fund balance as we did this year. We would not have had to do that, and this is the frustrating piece. So, Ms. Heike, you made a great point earlier. Last year they said, we are going to lower your retirement rate, and that's going to be the gift we give you instead of a foundation allowance. And they said it was going to be an ongoing gift. Well, they held that gift true, but they took the other side of ORS and increased it and ate up that entire gift. In turn, they also took away the money that they were giving us to cover that cost, and that's burning up all of the $400 per pupil that they're giving us. So if you look at our revenue next year versus our revenue this year, we're less than flat by a small amount. So if the government goes through with the budget they're proposing, and remember, the House's skinny budget cut the school aid fund by 25%. The governor and the Senate have not done that, but they haven't, they're saying they're giving us $400 per pupil. It's all getting eaten up by the ORS changes. And it's a lot of smoke and mirrors in the 147 piece of the state budget. And we talked about this at the legislative breakfast on Monday. There are districts seeing huge hits. And some of it depends on the type of employees that you have. You know, if a lot of your staff are younger, it doesn't hit you quite as hard. If you have more veteran staff, it hits you harder because that changes which retirement account they're in, and that's where some of those differences come. But ultimately, the story is, right now, they can say they're giving us $400 per pupil, but they're eating it all up in the costs that they have created for us. And so it's a flat budget. And we're going to be fighting to not have that happen. Um, and but again, if you look, our use of fund balance next year is about the same as this year, and that wouldn't be the case if we truly got an increase in state aid. Because if you figure $400 per pupil times 1,800 pupils, if we really were getting that, that would start to do away with some of that $2.6 million use of fund balance. So we really need to have conversations with our legislators that we truly need to see an increase. Some other pieces in that, the Senate is giving us a little bit more than $400 per pupil, but turned around and said that 50% of that has to be used for improving salaries. We've talked about this before. Just because they give us a 4% increase doesn't mean we can give a 4% raise, because a lot of our other costs go up by more than 4%. And they're going to tie our hands even more if they dictate how much of that per pupil increase has to be used. Not that we don't want to use it for our staff, right? And we talk long and hard about what do we put in the budget as an assumption for percent raise. And we just felt the best thing to do was to come to you with a no percent raise. This has all the steps and all the guarantees in it. I can tell you, Ms. Hendricks and I looked, and a 1% raise with FICA and retirement is about $200,000. So that starts to, that way you can look at this budget and say, what would happen if, right? We didn't want to put a 2% in and then you can't tell where we really stand. So that it's right around $200,000. We can get that number now that she's got all of the budget work done. We can look at those salaries and things. So those are decisions that are going to have to be made as we move forward, but we felt it was best right now to bring you a budget that you could just see where we were, and then you can make decisions from there as you need to. But what we really need to do is tell the state we really need to see an increase, not what they're going to tout as an increase that's really flat.
I have a question. So, and maybe I'm confused, but is there still, there's still some bills that haven't been sent to the governor, and if they get sent, will that affect us as far as the hard cap language with this budget? Because if they increase that hard cap, would it suck that out of there more?
That is possible, but I will tell you, it's been radio silence on those bills. My belief right now is that those bills are dead, that they're not going to get to the governor's desk. And with the makeup of the legislature right now, I don't see those bills being reintroduced, or at least getting through both chambers. So we budgeted for the new hard cap. So they increased the hard cap. We budgeted for that new hard cap. But you are correct. We budgeted the hard cap. We didn't budget what that potential change could have done, because there's no standing right now to believe it's going to happen. Very fair question, though.
Other questions or comments?
I guess I would like to say to our staff that I hope this isn't a call to panic, but a call to action. Because if every teacher and every parent and every parapro and every, TC and everyone calls and says, this is what's going to happen under your budget, it will change. It will. But we're all going to have to act. Because I don't want anyone to be panicked. I think we should all be collectively upset. When I saw this tonight, I thought, there's no way. Are you kidding me? And then you look at the numbers and you understand why we did it the way that we did. But I do hope that this is a call to action to everyone. Call your legislature. If you don't know who your legislator is, email me. I'll find them. Because this just can't happen. And Brian, do you know, because I haven't seen anywhere, how do they account, if it's a $400 per pupil increase, how do they account for that then, when technically right now there's a difference in the per pupil increase between the charter schools and everyone else, because we didn't get a per pupil increase? So do they get 400 on top of what they got last year and we get 400 from where we were?
It depends on which
proposed budget you look at.
Here we go. Another reason to call your legislatures, because they're going to give charter schools, which are not public schools. Don't let them tell you that they are. They're not. They're not run the same way. They don't have all the same rules that we have. They're going to give them more money than they're going to give your children. So this idea that we're equalizing payments across the board, now we're getting back into not equalizing payments. And it's just absolutely unacceptable. So I support everyone having choice, but the way we pay and the way we fund those choices has to be fair and equal. And there has to be equity there, and this is not. So again, reach out to me. I'll tell you who your legislatures are, all of them, and we should reach out all collectively so that this can be more fair to everybody.
Mr. Farrell.
I have an unrelated question. So, just for my knowledge, under expenditures, where does the technology department, what function code is technology?
280. It's a central support.
Okay, so we're anticipating a reduction in expense in that area of 140,651.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ms. Pryor.
Can I just make one,
Yeah,
more-
Mr.
one more
Farrell.
quick comment? I just want to comment on the fact that there's 3.6 million less projected in revenue. Krista, Brian, Ryan spent an ungodly amount of time having to cut. What you see here is cuts in every function code. 210, 220, 230, 240, 250, 260, 270, 280, 290, 300, 400, 600. There's cuts in every line item. And as Mr. Gearball relayed, much of that is because there is extraordinary uncertainty in what we will get per pupil in funding and what type of grant funds we will get, what type of local funds we will get. So I think Ms. Heike said it very well. This board, because I know everyone on this board, spent a lot of time communicating our concerns over the ORS gimmick. And that's what it was. It's a gimmick. And at that time, when that was communicated to us, there were many of us on this board that said, that isn't going to be a savings. And so now what we're seeing is exactly what we said was going to happen. So Ms. Heike is correct. There is a need for the public. There is a need for many to contact the state legislature and tell them that we need help, because clearly we're not being heard and we're your representatives. So it's time for our community to get angry, get upset, and to ask that our legislator work for them and for the students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farrell. Ms. Pryor.
And once again, I mean, I've only been on, this is only my second time around for budgets, but back again to the point where we are trying to estimate something where we don't know for sure. And we were here last year talking about a $400 per pupil increase, and then we got nothing. So it could still, there still could be a lot of changes to this and reduction if those three branches decide to change completely what they originally put out. So we are again fishing for what we could possibly do and put out for our kids, for our families, for our teachers. So I feel that this is going to be a common theme all the years I'm on this board, and with every school system, something has to change with the way that this occurs, because it's not fair to our staff to be in a worry and our families to be in a worry about how we are trying to budget this together, and then we could be back in 2 months and everything's different. And to Krista as well for all this extra work. So I could have saved that to the end, but I want to say that now while it's fresh.
And so the public remembers, we have to do this now. By law, we have to pass a budget by the end of the fiscal year. And so we have to pass a budget without knowing where the funding is coming from and what it's going to be, and whether funding that was there last year will even be this year. And so we go through this exercise every year because by law, we have to pass our budget, but the state does not. And they put us in this position every year.
And our budget can't have a deficit. either, right? That's the other.
We cannot have a deficit. And to your point earlier, if we get below 5%, the state will come in and take us over.
Yep.
And so, they just put us in this precarious position every year.
Mr. Burdette.
I just want to agree. We really need people to really reach out to the legislature and let them know just how important that this is to our school and all public schools. I also want to say that having two kids going through this district, and I imagine a lot of people watching this anyway, we know how great this school district is. I'm seeing, a projection of having less students next year. Shout it to the rooftops, put it on social media. This is a great place to send your kids to school. Get them in here.
Others? All right, we will move on to number 6, the 2025-2026 debt funds preliminary budget and attachment G. Ms. Hendricks.
Same as the other debt fund, top page is a summary of, or same as the other budget, the top page is a summary of the two individual debt funds. The numbers have been adjusted to account for the debt payments. And I know that you will all be made aware. We've already talked to PFM to determine how much we're going to have to levy going forward. There is no change. That's the good news. We're still going to stay at the 9.75% to make our debt payments. If you have any questions, and I will provide kind of a history of what our payments have been over the last couple of years and what they will be going forward, because I do know each payment amount going out.
That's good news. So that's what the budget hearing will be
Yes.
at 6. We do it at 6:30. Yeah,
6:45.
6:45
Yep.
in June. We'll talk about that rate. Any questions? All right, we'll move on to number 7, the 2025-2026 sinking fund preliminary budget as an attachment H. This is a new one for us.
In the fall, we were fortunate enough to pass a 1.5 mil sinking fund. And about 3 weeks ago, when I started looking at the calculations, I realized that our 1.5 mils is not going to be 1.5. We were affected by a Headley rollback. So it's going to be 1.48-ish. And that
Before
is
we
due
even
to the
collect it.
property values going up more than there's a limit and our property values went up more than that limit, so we can't ask for the mills that we levied. As you see, I'm estimating that we're going to bring in $1.1 million in revenue. As far as the expenditures, I put dollar amounts on lines that I know you as a board and we as administration have talked about where the monies could be used. There is money on the transportation line to cover the new school bus that you approved. There's money on the technology line, the 280 central support line, to cover the purchase of student devices. I know at one point there was talk about possibly using some of the funds for athletics. You will find that on the 290 line, the support service other. And the balance of it I put in operations and maintenance to cover our boilers and our roofs and our parking lots. None of these numbers, with the exception of the school bus, truly have been allocated. I don't have a set number. I just used like a rough estimate. So if we feel that technology needs more than 200, that can be amended at the next amendment. Without having our plan on how to spend the numbers, I wanted to make sure everything was allocated, but it's not necessarily where it has to stay.
It's also important to remember you also don't have to allocate and spend all of the money each year. If you have a larger expense, if we have a $950,000 roof we need to replace, you could you could allow money to roll from year to year and build that up over 3 or 4 years and then cover that expense in 1 year. So right now, this budget shows the entire 1.14 million being expended. That does not have to be the case. When you do an amendment this time next year, you may very well not have your expenses meeting your revenues and have some fund balance rolling into the next year to help cover future projects. But we felt this was the best way, since this is a stab. I will say the Headley rollback doesn't greatly affect the amount. It's a few $1,000s. But it's interesting that we had a Headley rollback before we even collected the tax the first time. So if you remember, I think on the ballot, we estimated that it would be 1.2. It would bring in 1.2 million and it's 1.14. So it's not a terrible difference. So any questions on that budget?
I know that this is just preliminary thoughts on where we would put the money, but a consistent question I have been receiving since the fall is, what are our priorities list, and when can the community possibly see something like that, or can we put it together so they know what we're spending it on before we do? I want them to have faith in what we said we were gonna do.
Yep. I can tell you everything. I have a 5-year roof plan that I will be turning over to Mr. McMahon. Mr. McMahon and I are meeting with a company that's done basically a facade 5-year plan, like what does the exterior of our buildings need. We are working on a pavement and a cement, getting estimates for those costs. We have an estimate on doing the water main at the middle school. The one thing we haven't done is an HVAC study on our heating and cooling, but I can tell you everything that we are looking at using these dollars for were talked about in the presentations I made to the community when we were talking about why we needed this. There's nothing in, I don't see any dollars being spent in the first 5 years of this sinking fund that don't come right out of that presentation. And I will be passing that presentation on, and it can be verified that that's the case down the road. We should be able to point that almost every expenditure there leads back to something I talked about in that presentation. So we will hold true to what we promised our community was going to be the need.
So I appreciate that, but I would like a little more transparency.
Yep.
Because I think our community deserves that, and quite honestly, I made promises to people that I want to be able to demonstrate were kept.
Yep.
And so I would like to see, what that priority list is, and what the costs are. So, and then an update on when those issues have been worked on and what the actual cost was. I mean, I almost feel like we need almost a running budget for the sinking fund and where money is being spent and why. Because I think our community took a real leap of faith on us. And I want to be able to provide them as much transparency as possible.
Absolutely. And I think, I have a good basis to hand off for that priority list to be built. I also think I would not spend all of the money on items. You're going to want to hold some back because you're going to have a swim situation, a pool situation. You're going to have a hot water heater situation. And I think what's going to be important is when those expenses get brought to the board to approve or get made, it needs to be reported publicly that we are spending sinking fund money to purchase a $53,000 hot water heater for Simons Elementary School, and that's in line with the presentation. Yep, I agree that each time money's spent, it should be made public as to that's what sinking funds are being used for.
No, I completely agree with you. And I completely agree that you need a rainy day fund in here, right? Because something big is going to happen. We saw it this year with the chillers and there was an issue at the pool.
Yep.
And so I just would like to know, I think it's fair to tell the community, we think we're going to set aside X dollars to save for tomorrow.
Mhm.
And so then they'll know that that's our plan. And if we add to that next year, that's great. Let's talk about that and why. But then also this year, and as the expenses come, here are our priorities. This is what we've paid out of that sinking fund, like we told you we would.
Yeah, I'm collecting all of that information right now. Like I said, we're getting a lot of plans from outside companies. My goal is from the last day of school until my last day on June 30th to try and turn that into as best a plan with prioritized in different areas, so that that can be presented.
Other comments? Ms. Gutierrez?
Thank you. If I'm reading these two budgets right side by side, the general fund budget and the sinking fund budget, is it a fair statement that some of the cuts that were needed to be made in the general fund budget for next year might be offset by some of the support that could be covered in the sinking fund, and the buses is an example?
Some of the reductions to lines that were made in, for instance, operations and maintenance, I reduced out of this year's budget the chillers, the boilers, all of those items, and that is part of the negative $245,000, or the reduction of $245,000 in operations and maintenance. That, pieces of that at least, could come out of the sinking fund.
Yeah.
As long as it's for the replacement of an item and not the actual cleaning of the carpet, changing the light bulb. But if it's replacing, yes, some of the things that added to this year's budget could be taken out of next year's. And that, I think, is kind of where we were talking when Mr. Gearbaugh was talking about the rainy day fund. Those are the unknowns. So we can plan for the roofs, we can plan for the parking lots, we can plan for whatever other large ticket item. But I presented a budget to you in January, and by March I was hit with about $150,000 worth of expenses that I couldn't plan for.
Right.
And those are the types of things that, yes, could be moved out of this. You will see part of the $200,000 for technology would be about $100,000 in student devices. So that is a reduction, and that truly is reflected when it went down by 140 in central
Right.
support. That truly was a move into sinking fund.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And to Mrs. Heike's point about transparency, I think it is important that we continue to share that with our community, where we are able to absorb some of those cuts to the general fund because of the support that our community gave us for the sinking fund. And so although the general fund cuts, kind of across the board look pretty deep, we can match that up with the sinking fund and see how that can alleviate some of those cuts. And so I think that makes, a tight situation a little bit better. And as much as we can do about communicating the costs that are paid for by the sinking fund, which would have normally been absorbed by the general fund, I think that's an important message to continue to send to our community.
Good point, thank you. Others? All right, we will move on to the 2025-2026 food service preliminary budget and attachment I, Ms. Hendricks.
Food service takes care of itself. As I said, we've been fortunate that we've been building our fund balance in our food service budget. I did look at, for all of the budgets, I looked at the three parties' state budgets, the governor's, the Senate, and the House. Given the drastic cuts that the House made, almost everything was taken out. But if the item and the free-for-all food was in both of the other two, I did include it. So my assumption at this point is that the state revenue of $480,000 is going to stay there because that's, everybody eats free. That being said, I normally budget my revenues and my expenditures the same because ideally this is not supposed to be carrying a huge fund balance. The food service program is only supposed to have a fund balance that will carry them on for 3 months. After that, we're supposed to be spending it down. Knowing that we have a substantial fund balance going in, I try to keep my revenues and my expenditures at the same point. There is a transfer to general fund that is for indirect cost, and there's a calculation that I have to follow to account for that number. So right now it's 50,000 in the budget, but it could fluctuate. So, any questions on food service?
Do you have a general estimation as to what the loss of revenue would be if they did not do Meals for All?
It wouldn't,
I would,
it wouldn't totally be a loss of revenue because remember, for a large percentage of the students, it would just switch from the state paying for their lunch to them paying for their lunch. So it wouldn't be you wouldn't lose that full $480,000. A chunk of
Right.
that would move into local revenue because we would have students paying for lunches.
Right, and
I don't see us getting to a point where we wouldn't be able to cover the expenses with that year's revenue.
Okay.
Um,
And I know that we do also have the fund balance if disaster were to happen. I was just curious if we had a general sense as to what the impact might be. But-
so as of the May state aid payment, which would be paying us for food served through the end of April, we have received about 390,000.
I think what's important to understand, I'll try and make this, the reason our fund balance has grown is because our usage factor has gone up. And you make a little bit of money on each lunch you sell. So partly what you have to remember is if free food for all stops and a percentage of our students stop buying their lunch and start bringing their lunch, then our food costs and all of those things come down too. So it's not like all of a sudden we lose revenue and all the expenses stay the same, right? Those revenues and expenses are going to come down together because if we're serving less kids, we're buying less food. And so it's not going to cause a major swing in the budget. The whole budget will come down, revenues and expenses. And we just wouldn't add to the fund balance because we wouldn't have those extra meals helping generate that little percent of profit on every meal. Does that?
Yep.
Okay.
And Brian, I want to make sure everyone understands too that there are rules about what we have to charge per lunch, right?
Yep.
So this is not a huge revenue source.
No.
There's actually federal statutes that require us to pay a certain percentage. And there have been, I mean, it was one of the very first votes I had to take, and it was very hard for me to understand. But there have been times in the past when we have been required by federal law to increase the price
Yep.
of the lunch so that we stayed within those guidelines. So
Yes.
some of this is a function of federal statute.
Yep. A paid lunch has to be within a certain amount of what we get reimbursed for a covered lunch from the federal government. And so you are correct. We have had to raise our lunch prices for those that pay for them because we were mandated to do that. We really don't charge hardly anything above the mandated amount. We just went to like the next nickel to keep it at a 5-cent amount. So yeah, we are not in any way generating revenue off of this. The only reason it is because our usage factor went up so much. And if you're making 3 or 4 cents per lunch, that starts to add up.
I just wanted everyone to
Nope,
understand that.
nope,
we're not,
thank
yeah.
you. That was a good clarifying point.
Any others? All right, we'll move on to the 2025-2026 Student School Activity Funds Preliminary Budget in Attachment J. Ms. Hendricks.
As I mentioned when we went over the amendments, I pretty much budget the revenues and expenditures to be equal. They kind of normally fall in line with each other. So I am estimating revenues of 600,000 and expenditures of 600,000 and kind of holding flat at the fund balance that is in this fund.
Any questions? All right, thank you. Those are first readings of all of those budgets. We will be voting on those at the June 4th meeting. Definitely you can ask questions of Ms. Hendricks and Mr. Gearbaugh until that time, and hopefully we get some better information from from our legislature as far as what we are going to be receiving, so. The next budget item we are gonna have a vote, so I need a motion to adopt the resolution in support of the 2025-2026 WISD budget as included in attachment K1.
Moved by Gutierrez.
Support by Burdette.
So moved and supported to adopt the resolution in support of the 2025-2026 WISD budget as included in attachment K1. So at our first meeting in May, we had a first reading of this budget. There was a presentation by WISD. We had some questions to Mr. Gearbaugh at that time. We had opportunity to ask more questions. Is there any further discussion on the 2025-2026 WISD budget? All right, it's been moved and supported to adopt the resolution in support of the 2025-2026 WISD budget as included in attachment K1. Ms. Murray?
Sislo,
Yes.
Burdette,
Yes.
Barrow,
Yes.
Gutierrez,
Yes.
Pica,
Yes.
Murray, yes, Pryor,
Yes.
and motion carries 7-0.
All right, next up, I need a motion to adopt the resolution in support of the WISD CTE millage as included in attachment L.
Moved by Murray,
Support by Farrell.
It's been moved and supported to adopt resolution in support of WISD CTE millage as included in attachment L. Discussion, we did have Mr. Rowe give a presentation, I thought a very fine presentation of the CT offerings for our area. And he did speak to the possibility of asking for a millage. And so we have a resolution to support that millage. They're going to be asking for 1 mil to be placed on the November 2025 budget or ballot. I apologize, the ballot. There's been some polling done by various professional agencies in regards to this to kind of feel where they may be able to put that at. Any other further information in regards to this, Mr. Gearbaugh?
No, just, the superintendents don't take it lightly when we bring a recommendation to the county to implement a county-wide millage. So we've done about 2 years of research on this. We've looked at what are the offerings in all of the districts, how can we better align those offerings, how can we do away with what we're going to call CTE deserts, because not every student in every district in this county has the same opportunity, and we feel that that's very important. We also fully understand that travel time can affect whether a student takes a CTE class. The more you can offer in your district or in close proximity, the more likely a student is to take it. So there are some goals built into this to start to have some more regional locations of CTE classes, including some that you've added here already and more that may be added here. And then we go to our voters. And we're not going to put something on the ballot if we don't feel it has support. And so Epic MRA, which is a company that the ISD uses, a very reputable company for doing public polling, did a public poll. They polled 600 people, and the percentages made sure they have to have a certain percentage in each district. So there were Milan residents included in that poll. And that poll for 1 mil with some conversation came back with 77% in support of a 1 mil, 70% saying they would vote yes, and 7% saying they would likely vote yes. That was up a little bit. The poll, like just a cold call. So the way these polls work is they call you and they say, we're thinking about running a millage, would you vote yes for it? And then they say, if I told you this, would that make you more likely? If I told you this, would that make you more likely? And they work through that. So this 77% is the final percent. The initial percent cold call was above 70%. Just cold call, the first. And so I will also tell you, we polled at a 0.8 mil and a 1 mil, and there was like a 1% difference in the polling. And so with the possibility of a Headley rollback and everything, it might be down to a 0.8 over time. So with that minimal difference in the polling, it made sense to approach the 1 mil. So there's a lot of research, a lot of effort, a lot of time. We do not take this lightly. And I know that you don't take it lightly when you're voting on a recommendation to add to our county tax bill. But I just wanted to explain that this is not taken lightly by the superintendents either, and a lot of time and effort has gone into making sure that this is viable. And you can read reports daily of students rethinking college and looking more at career and tech ed and the trades. And so we need to make sure that we keep up with what our students want for their future.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. Just like MIPSers, it's important that people know that CTE is career technical education. That includes cosmetology, food service, not just buildings and trades. Health.
Right.
There's a healthcare component. One of the things.
Welding, automotive,
Yeah.
CNC lathe.
So many aspects. So just wanted to make sure that we all knew what that was. Ms. Heike.
I'm glad you made all those clarifications. I also would add one more that I think, because I don't want parents to start dividing along well, my kid is on the college track, so maybe this isn't important to my children. We have a number of kids who participate, particularly in the health programs, whose goal is to go to college and then become nurses and physician's assistants and things like that. And then when they finish that program, they take the test, and I think a vast majority of them pass, and they become certified nurse assistants. So they get that leg up before they go to nursing school, and then they also have the CNA, so they can work while they're going to school, which I think is also helpful. So don't kind of turn your mind off into this because you think your kids are on a college track and maybe they won't utilize this in the future, because that's not necessarily the case. But I do want to remind the public of the presentation that came, because if I'm remembering correctly, and I should have gone to look and I didn't, not only are there some CTE deserts, but we're kind of an anomaly about the funding of CTE as well. That this is a very normal way of funding CTE and expanding it throughout the state, and we're kind of the odd ones out that don't have this millage to support that.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. There's only like 7 or 9
It
counties
was a
in the
small
state.
number that didn't have
It's
one.
under
and we're one of
10
them.
of counties that don't have a CTE millage, and we are one of them.
We're one of them.
You are correct.
And so this would work for very different reasons, much like our special ed millage does, that these funds would go to support those programs. It wouldn't, come here and back into our general fund or anything like that. So I don't want anyone to think that we're double dipping. But I think that these programs have been very well received here in Milan. The building one down in the MCIS is making great strides, and all I hear are wonderful things from people who are participating in it, not just the people who are running it. So this would help expand all of those and offer those opportunities to a lot more students, because I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that every year there are kids who want to participate, but there just are not enough spots.
I was just going to say that. One of the other goals of this is, I can tell you, in the desired programs, which are about half of them, we have waiting lists every year of kids that we have to say, you can't take that CTE class because Milan doesn't have enough slots. And so that's another goal of this, is to expand how many sections of each class we have, so that if we have 12 kids that want to take welding, 12 kids can take it. Right now, if we have 12 kids that want to take it, we get to send 5. And so that's just not where we want to be. I will also tell you, I sit on the Southwest Washington Consortium Board, which is 6 districts, but this is going to bring all of the CTE in the county together. So it'll bring the Ann Arbor group, it will bring the IPSI group, it will bring the 6 districts that are in the Southwest Washington Consortium. Those will still operate, but we'll also have an overarching group that will see it all. In Southwest Washington Consortium, each year we look at what do kids want, and we have decreased a program by a section and increased we monitor that closely. So we're not keeping 5 sections of something open if we only have 3 sections of kids that want to take it. So we try to modify that and keep the budget very, very reasonable.
Thank you for all that. And my last comment is, so when you see memes on Facebook and Instagram that you should be supporting CTE programs the same way that you push for your colleges, this is how we do it.
Yep.
So if you're out there sharing those memes, I really encourage you to vote in favor
Oh,
for this
yes.
village,
Yep.
because this is exactly how we do that.
Yep, absolutely.
Any other discussion? Yeah, Ms. Pryor.
So this is a WISD, not a per place, and there will be the ones who will monitor it, the WISD, and disperse the funds through the schools.
Yes, there will be an overarching group of superintendents that will monitor that budget and manage it, but the ISD would be the fiscal agent. They would hold the funds.
And
Yes.
this could be in addition to certain school systems that currently have a CTE millage already.
There are no, you can't
Okay,
have a
I
CTE
thought
millage as
I
a
thought
school
Dexter
district.
had one. I apologize. So that was my mistake.
Yeah, no school district can have a CTE millage. It can only be done at the county level. We all have programs. It's going to help expand those programs and also help develop new programs in areas that don't have them.
Okay, that cleared up all the rest of my questions. Thank you.
And I will also tell you, CTE programs are expensive to run. Like, if you think about running a welding class, it's expensive. An automotive class, these classes aren't cheap to run, and that equipment needs to be replaced, and this will help do that as well.
Good clarification. Any others? All right, it's been moved and supported to adopt the resolution in support of WISD CTE millage as included in attachment L. Ms. Murray.
Thank you. Burdette,
Yes.
Farrell,
Yes.
Gutierrez,
Yes.
Heika,
Yes.
Murray, yes. Pryor,
Yes.
Sislo,
Yes.
motion carries 7-0.
All right, next up in the strategic area of learning, environment, and culture, I need a motion to approve the membership of the 2025-2026 Professional Development Advisory Committee as provided in attachment M.
Motion by Pryor.
Support by Burdette.
It's been moved and supported to approve the membership of the 2025-2026 Professional Development Advisory Committee as provided in attachment M. Again, this is a committee that has to be made up of a certain makeup of folks as far as parents, teachers, non-teaching staff, to help select the areas for professional development for the next school year. So there's a committee in front of us for us to consider. Any further?
Just quickly, when we started counting professional development time as contact time, so to get into the wonderful world of abbreviations, when we wanted to count some of our DPPD as QPD, we have to have this committee. This committee meets, and I do want people to understand, they basically approve a list of broad topics that they would like to see teachers provided professional development on. And then a smaller group of teachers, and sometimes in each building, develop the PD that they're going to do. So this group will meet. There's a very strict process that we follow. The law is clear, and the first part of the law is that the board has to approve this group each year. And we will present the topics that we think should be, and then they can add topics, and we modify that list, and then they take an official vote on the list. And all of that has to go to pupil accounting at the county when we're audited, so that we are allowed to count some of our DPPD as QPD.
Any questions?
Mr. Sislo.
Yeah, Ms. Gutierrez.
I had reached out to Mr. Gearba earlier today about the list because I was noticing that there were no paraprofessionals on the list, and I had a question about that. He clarified for me that this committee looks only at professional development for teachers, and that there's a careful balance that needs to be kept between the number of members that are in fact teachers versus non-teaching staff and parents. And so while I'm comfortable with the list as provided, and the individuals who are representative on it, with respect to teacher professional development, I continue to feel that it's very important for our board to support and encourage professional development for our paraprofessionals across the district. I understand that there are some very unique challenges that come with that, given different roles that our paras have and so forth. And so Mr. Gearboss suggested one way to navigate that might be to ask Mr. Smith to put together a similar type of advisory group of paraprofessionals to hear about their needs and strategies that might best work for professional development. And I would like to encourage that to happen. I think that we've heard from our staff, we've heard from our parents, we've heard from this board that professional development is something that is highly valued, and I want to make sure that we are responsive to that on an ongoing basis. And so I appreciate the conversation Mr. Gearbaugh and I had. I'm prepared to support the board as put forth, but I would like to continue to make sure that we are being responsive to our paraprofessionals' needs for professional development.
Thank you for that advocacy. Ms. Murray.
I was just going to ask that you translate the acronyms DPPD versus QPD for the community. I myself had to refresh like the QPD part. I was pretty sure I knew what the Q was.
District provided professional development and qualified professional development.
Correct. And there's a ratio of hours that is state set, right?
Yep.
In the, yeah.
And there are also, you have to have so many hours in a day to count it as qualified. You can only do so many of those days before the school year starts. It's highly regulated by the pupil accounting branch of MDE. So our goal is we count our 4 professional development days that occur within the school calendar. We don't count any of the 3 days that we do prior to the start of the school year.
I think the only other thing I would add would be just to echo Ms. Gutierrez's statements in support of paraprofessional PD. And I love that suggestion of a advisory committee in concert with the certified teaching staff advisory committee, as well as just urging, you know, the continued look in that professional development for our certified staff of what the co-teaching, if you will, like what the best implemented model for working with your paraprofessionals within that classroom setting. How do you best work and serve your students together as a team? I think that's a valuable place for us to always be refreshing and building that collaborative team within each classroom.
Any others? So certainly thank you to those staff that are serving on that committee as well as the parent community members. The board greatly appreciates it. Any others? All right, it's been moved and supported to approve the membership of the 2025-2026 Professional Development Advisory Committee as provided in attachment M. Ms. Murray.
Thank you. Farrow,
Yes.
Gutierrez,
Yes.
Heika,
Yes.
Murray, yes. Pryor,
Yes.
Sislo,
Yes.
Burdette,
Yes.
and motion carries 7-0.
All right, and last but certainly not least, our last voting resolution for this evening. You've passed for sitting through all these budget meetings, budget presentations, so we sincerely appreciate that. I need a motion to approve Brandy Ignani as the Paddock Elementary School principal effective June 1st, 2025.
Moved by Heika.
Support by Farrow.
So moved and supported to approve Brandy Ignani as the Paddock Elementary School principal effective June 1st, 2025. She's here this evening with her husband. We appreciate you folks being here. We're very excited to have you. Obviously, she's went through a hiring process led by Mr. McMahon. We want to share some things with us, Mr. McMahon.
I would be honored, yes. I think I shared with you the value I place in the opportunity to hire folks, especially administrators, especially this one will be the first member of my team or our administrative team that I get the chance to lead. And so we put a lot of stock in it. It was extensive. We conducted a screening interview process. Then we had 2 formal round, first and second round interviews that were an hour each with staff, and then we added administrative staff in the second round. And then another hour, some walkthrough with, in this case it was Lon Smith and Jen Buckle and I. We toured the building. It's a chance to give the candidate an opportunity to see the building, make sure it's a good fit for them, and also a good fit for us. The staff was heavily involved in giving us input, in fact, even helping us write questions so we can make sure it was a good fit. So it was quite a process, and I'm happy to present Brandy Ignagne to you. She comes with us with like 10 years experience, elementary, middle school teaching, instructional coaching. She's an educational consultant with Talent Together right now. Some things that stand out to me is her background and ability for coaching and modeling instructional and teaching strategies, instructional practices. That goes for both academic and social emotional programs, which is kind of a highlight for us next year. And her background with program implementation. And if you find her half as personable as I do, I think we're going to be in pretty good shape. So we got a great candidate. We had some, it was a tough selection. We had some good candidates all around, but we're really looking forward to adding Brandy to our team and starting really soon at Paddock. She's going to be able to get in before the end of the year and meet some of the kids and teachers and get started. So
Awesome. Any questions or comments? Welcome. Thank you very much. We're excited to have you for sure. Awesome. Awesome. Paddock is always well represented at our meetings. You guys win the staff attendance award tonight, so we sincerely appreciate it. So I have a motion and support to approve Brandy Ignagne as the Paddock Elementary School principal effective June 1 of 2025. Ms. Murray.
Gutierrez,
Yes.
Heika,
Yes.
Murray, yes. Pryor,
Yes.
Sislo,
Yes.
Burdette,
Yes.
Farrow,
Yes.
and motion carries enthusiastically 7-0.
So
We've got your keys. We'll get them to you in a minute.
You're welcome to leave if you'd like. We just have our comments to finish up. So, but you've had. All right, there you go. All right, you get extra credit now. All right. Next, we will go on to communications and community engagement. Back to public comments. Are there any students who'd like to address the board? Are there any public members who'd like to address the board? All right, hearing none. We will move on to student board representative comments. Ms. Heika.
As we're wrapping up our school year, the seniors, which are leaving this Friday, and spring sports are coming to an end and wrapping up in the next week. Just a reminder that tomorrow is honors night for seniors, and they will receive their cords, awards, and scholarships. Thursday, the 29th, is the Paddock walkthrough and the cap and gown distribution. Friday, the 23rd, is their last day again, and Sunday, the 1st, is their graduation. And senior breakfast is at 8 a.m., and attendance is mandatory. So it's an exciting time. It's almost the end of the year, so I just want to say good luck to the seniors moving forward, and let's finish the year off strong.
Awesome. Thank you so much, for sure. Next up, Assistant Superintendent comments. Mr. McMahon.
Mr. Sislo, I just want to one more time formally thank the Paddock staff for the help they shared, the time and the energy they put into this principal hire, and then also to congratulate you formally. So I'm really excited to have you on board, Brandy. I will also share with you that at the same time we've been working on assistant superintendent interview process. We conducted a formal first round last week. We've got some great candidates, and we're working towards still bringing you a candidate to approve on the June 4th board meeting. Yes, June 4th board meeting, and we have a few steps to conduct there. I also would like to thank Nicole Kinzel for all her work on the SEEB committee. I mean, for all her work in her career, but also especially on the SEEB committee and the last two public presentations she put together for the SEEB recommendations that you'll be looking at closely, I think also on June 4th. Maybe don't come to that meeting too, because that could be a long one. And I do want to update you folks on some curriculum reviews are being conducted right now. The state has is in the process of putting forth a 35M grant, which is a literacy per pupil grant. They are currently, we're told, they've created a committee. They're adding, creating a list of programs that are going to be supported by this grant to purchase materials and programs. So we're trying to get ahead of the curve, and we're reviewing programs for actually young 5th through 5th grade literacy, which Mrs. Nagby will be heavily involved in the fall. So Tracy Terrace and Tiny Sargos are doing a lot of legwork for me. We've met with vendors continuously for the last few weeks. On May 27th, we have a day where some vendors that we've selected down to are going to present to us some options. We're looking to select 2 pilot programs to push in next year. That number can't be specific because in some cases it's foundational skills for one, but roughly 2 programs per grade level to pilot for a little bit in the fall to work towards making a purchase. We're also trying to kind of work within the state guidelines without having their list yet. Michigan is by far not the first state to do this. We have a pretty good idea what's going to be on the list. We actually found some good programs that we know aren't going to be on the list, so we're trying to work within those guidelines. So there will be more on that to come. The purchase would be like hopefully this time next year for the following year. We're also working on a secondary math, middle school and high school math review. Middle school is narrowed down to a program that they're going to continue to pilot, and high school is narrowed down to a couple that we're looking at for, again, a fall opportunity for them to pilot some materials to just kind of work on our alignment and update our curriculum resources. We've had a turnover in the secondary math teachers in the last few years that just kind of pointed out that, yeah, the old notebooks that we've been using for 40 some years, we need to update the materials. So we're looking at that. And I want to thank Christina Mahaney at the high school. And Jennifer Barker did a lot of legwork in the last year at the middle school, just helping me reach out to the vendors and hosting them and having the presentations. It was a real big assist to get that. So we're moving forward with those pilot programs, and you'll hear more about that in the next year. That's it for me.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. McMahon. Next up is superintendent comments. Mr. Gearbo.
A lot to share as we enter the middle of the month of May and the busy time. So first, I was able to attend the annual regional Special Olympics swim meet last night. It was just a great event. We hosted 2 other area teams. Our team in the county has grown from 6 athletes to 23 athletes in just a couple of years, with several of those athletes from Milan area schools. The excitement in the pool was just contagious last night. If you walked in, just kids cheering on other kids, and students with all different levels of disability. And the greatest piece that I see is they do like relays that are just 25 yards long. It doesn't matter if the last team is finishing 3 minutes after the first team finished. Everybody in that pool is cheering for those kids, and it's just so neat, and just the smiles on the kids' faces, just amazing. I also attended the South and West Washtenaw Consortium Awards on May 8th. It was wonderful to see the success of our career and technical ed students being recognized. And I will add to a comment Mrs. Heike made, one of the students that got one of the welding awards is actually going into engineering at an Ivy League school, but felt that welding was important to him. And I will tell you, with a dad that worked in a Ford factory, he would have loved for more engineers to be trades knowledgeable, because sometimes engineers don't always give the best recommendations for what actually works in a factory. So yeah, I mean, here's a kid going to an Ivy League that was in one of our CTE classes. So I think that's pretty special. The middle school and high school band concert was on May 13th. Was a huge success. I want to congratulate all of our musicians and Mr. Lopez, the band director, for all of his guidance this year. Upcoming events. I'm going to probably repeat several that Ms. Heike put out there, but senior night is tomorrow at 6:30 in the high school theater. The choir concert is May 22nd at 7 p.m. in the high school theater. Young adult graduation is on May 29th at 12 p.m. noon in the middle school librarium. The high school graduation is at 2 p.m. on June 1st in the high school gym, and 8th grade recognition night is at 6:15 p.m. on June 15th. All of those are on the weekly memo calendar and on the Google board calendar, but I just wanted to get those publicized so that all of our community knows as well. Some sad news in our staff over the last week or two. Amy Forrester, the administrative assistant at Simons, lost her mother last week. And CJ Brooks, our elementary music teacher, lost his father in the last couple of weeks. So we keep both of those families in our thoughts, and just want to wish them as best they can as they work to get back to work and get back into the groove of things after losing a parent. We also had Julie Webb, a PECC assistant teacher, so assistant teacher in our early childhood programs, lost her adult daughter this week. And so our heart goes out to her and our thoughts and prayers. On a little bit more positive note, our administrative assistants achieved a 99% completion rate for the required reporting of student immunizations. A special thanks to Yvette Smith and Jenny Drozdowski. We have secretaries in all 4 buildings that work on these, but remember, every kindergartner and every 7th grader has to be verified. That doesn't mean they have to be immunized. Let's be clear. There are paths to not be immunized and still meet the requirement. But we have to report on every single kindergartner, every single 7th grader, and every new student to the district. And we reported on 99% of those students. The requirement is 95%. So a huge thank you. And it's not just one simple click. It's a process to verify. The professional development held on May 9th was a huge success. I just want to thank all of our staff members who provided great PD opportunities. Remember, a lot of our professional development is led by our own staff. And I also want to thank all of our staff for attending and participating that day. On May 12th, Lon, Ryan, and I conducted the final session of the 24-25 new teacher orientation session. We appreciate our new teachers taking the time out to attend these sessions throughout the year. This session focused on district special education services, the school improvement process, district demographics, the strategic plan, how difficult conversations with parents can best be held, and a time to share compliments and concerns with the superintendent and new superintendent. Just a great evening. Really appreciate those with the staff. A lot of good feedback from them. And Mr. McMahon was there to hear that feedback, and so kind of knows the positives and the things that they would like to see us work on, and we appreciate that feedback. The posting for the next Director of Buildings and Grounds closed on Monday. We have several qualified applicants. I will be working through that hiring process over the next couple of weeks and keeping Mr. McMahon informed of the decisions that are made. I want to remind the Board of Education and the community that the required district budget hearing is scheduled for 6:45 p.m. on Wednesday, June 4th, right here in the district office boardroom. Also under board, the Michigan Association of School Boards recognized the accomplishments of 2 of our school board members for their dedication to ongoing education and training. Sarah Murray earned her Level 1 Certified Board Member Award and her Level 2 Award of Merit. And Cassie Pryor earned her Level 1 Certified Board Member Award and her Level 2 Award of Merit. Congratulations to both those board members. For community members that don't fully know this, the Michigan Association of School Boards offers what are called CBA classes. And when you achieve all of the 100 level classes, so they set it up a little bit like college, there are, help me, 8 or 9?
9.
There are 9 100 level classes. So in order to earn that level 1, they have to attend all 9 of those classes. And it's really a great experience. There's one on budgeting, there's one on communications, there's one on staff relations. It really gets our board knowledgeable about what it means to be a board member. And we thank them. And all of our board members are earning those credits every year. Just some of them at several checkpoints do earn recognition. On May 9th, the county superintendents and the local police departments held a joint meeting. The meeting allowed us to collectively review our safety training, safety initiatives, and important information about school safety. It was important to have that meeting because, as you know, we have a new sheriff in town. And we all got to meet him and meet some of their meet her and some of his, meet her and some of her staff, and specifically the staff that work directly with schools. And so I just think it's important to our community to know that we do several times a year get all of the superintendents and all of the chiefs and leaders of all of the police departments in the county together, and we talk about very important school safety topics. The Big Red Board Chat held on May 8th and the community hearing held tonight, both hosted by the Sex Education Advisory Board, were very informative and provided good information to the community. This is a reminder that the focus of these events was to share upcoming recommended changes to our sex education curriculum. The major changes include a refresh to our current materials. So for the most part, what we are doing, the biggest part of this recommendation is we're just purchasing the newer version of the curriculum that we currently use. It's the Wonder Years is the name of the program. So we're just purchasing that next update so that we can refresh a little bit. We are also looking at adding a 5th grade unit, because remember, with our building reconfiguration, we used to do a 4th grade and then we jumped and did 6th grade. With 5th grade at the middle school, we now have a health teacher available, so we're going to put a small unit in place. It will fit right into the materials that it'll basically expand on what we do in 4th grade, but won't quite get them to what we do in 6th grade. And remember, all of these things go through a very serious review process by SEEB, then 2 public community meetings. They will be brought to you at June 4th for your approval. The last thing that we are doing, so we've got the 3 changes: refresh the materials, add 5th grade, and then we're looking to add additional materials to help with our students with special needs. And the nice thing is we had 2 moms with special needs students come to the first community forum, and they looked through those materials in depth and had a great conversation with Ms. Kenzel and shared their thoughts and feelings. And so that will really help improve the curriculum for that piece. And my last thing is Mrs. Pryor and I attended the WISD legislative breakfast on Monday. While there wasn't a lot of detail there regarding federal and state school aid budgets for 25-26, there's definitely a lot of concern in the funding levels that are being proposed and being discussed, and I appreciate our board pushing for advocacy. That's all I have this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gearbaugh. Board member comments. Mr. Burdette.
First, I'd like to say I was able to attend the senior night for the Milan girls soccer team last Monday against Lincoln. It was a lot of fun to see those seniors be recognized at halftime of the game, and it was even more fun that we won 12-0. But Milan is hosting the girls soccer districts. So the semifinals will be next Tuesday at the soccer field. The championship game next Thursday, the 29th, which hopefully we're going to see Milan in that. I'm pretty confident, but we'll see how it goes.
And currently rated number
5.
5 or 3?
3, I don't know. It's pretty high.
Definitely top 5.
It's good.
Nice.
I was also able to attend the band concert. It was just a wonderful concert, very beautiful, including the tribute at the end, in which the middle school and high school band joined together to play Born to Run by Bruce Springsteen, which, if any of you know Miss Upton, she loved Springsteen. And my son actually spoke during the concert and talked about a dark time that he was kind of going through at the beginning of the year. And I imagine a lot of those students were going through at the beginning of the year. And Mr. Lopez coming in with the enthusiasm and the love for music and teaching just made a world of difference and really pulled those kids back into it and kind of continued to garner that love for music. So big thank you to Mr. Lopez, and we appreciate everything that you do, and we're glad that you were here to get us through those times. And then lastly, I would just like to say a few words of recognition for the Milan High School seniors in the theater department. I've been to every show, seen all of them, even going back to some of 6th grade with Peter Pan, and not just seeing every show once, but literally every single show that they did. And it has just been such an honor to witness these kids grow as actors as well as people, and they will be greatly missed within the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burdette. Others? Ms. Pryor.
I actually have quite a bit tonight because I did attend the legislative breakfast with Mr. Gearbaugh, and like he said, they talked a lot about different budgets. There's not much movement, but one thing I did write down that we had talked about earlier, that the House actually did look at removing the budgeting for meals for the state for next year. Now, nothing has been decided, but that has been something that was put out on the table. Mr. Gearboss spoke up and did advocate for all the districts that our state should not be putting caveats on what they can and cannot do with certain areas of the budget, as it restricts us from things we need to do. We talked a lot about Head Start, because that's a big concern across the state and the country, the elimination of Head Start budget, that it would go from federal and move to the state budgets, which would have a trickle-down effect. There is an event on the 31st at Riverside Park in Ypsilanti celebrating Head Start. The WISD has information about it on their website if anybody is interested. Sorry, I took notes, so I want to make sure I say everything. We did also discuss the CTE millage there, and there is a lot of support from our county from the people in the room to advocate for that being passed for the betterment of all of our students. So that was the gist of it. It wasn't as much information as normal at the end of the year with all the things going on. It wasn't as big as usual. I was also able to attend the soccer and baseball and softball games last week, and they were quite exciting. Soccer was, but I have not been to a softball game in a very long time, and it was awesome. So they went into overtime. I got to see Miss Heike play. It was a very fun night. The parents and everybody in attendance was pretty excited about how things turned out. We did win, so that's what made it even better.
A massive comeback from behind.
A massive comeback from behind. It was an excellent night. I was also able to be at the Big Red Board chat, and the parents that did come, it was they asked a lot of good questions at the C presentation itself, but afterwards at the board chat, we got to talk, and it was nice being able to engage with them that way in our community. So thank you to those who did show up. I also want to echo Miss Gutierrez's request for para PD. I think that sometimes it's easy, we talk about it, but sometimes it's easy to underestimate the amount of reliance that our students have on paraprofessionals. They develop such a trusting relationship with those staff, and the teachers rely on them as well. And to be able to support them in their journey to grow professionally, I think helps us retain them, which helps us reduce behavior and helps those students grow and perform the best they possibly can. So I would also like to echo that. And one thing I was excited to see that was advertised this week is that the high school is doing painting the parking spots. I was really excited. I saw that at several other schools in the last few years going to track meets and such, and I'm glad that somebody finally brought that. I'm not sure who to credit with it, but I'm excited. I will walk around that parking lot next year and look at all the spots. And the final thing is I think it's going to become a common theme at all these meetings to make sure that you try to stay as informed as possible with what is happening with everything in the federal and state legislature, laws. Everything affects our school in one way or the other. Get a subscription to Gongwer, follow it as it goes along on what is happening every day, what's being proposed to our state for changes to the laws and what's happening with the budget, so you are informed. Reach out and tell people what you like and what you don't like so they know what way to advocate for us, because what you say does make a difference, and it helps our school. It helps all the kids of our state. And any advocacy that you could help with us, because we're reaching out and doing that, we would appreciate it, and so would your students. So congratulations to everybody graduating, because we won't have a meeting till after, and I look forward to seeing them graduate in the first. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Pryor. Others?
I want to also echo congratulations to our seniors. I can't wait to see all of you on graduation day and see where you all go, and that how many of you come back, because we need you to come back. You can go, but you need to come back. Also want to thank everyone that attended the Big Red Board chat. I thought the SEEB presentation was wonderful, and it was very hands-on. There were lots of Chromebooks there and parents who really wanted to peruse The materials for our special needs student really had an opportunity to sit and go through it all, and they asked a lot of, I thought, very important questions. And really highlighted for me the just lack of resources, not lack of trying on our part, but just the lack of resources for those students. And so that was something that I was unaware of, and so I appreciated that conversation. And then in the end, I mean, we had a great conversation. Part of it, we were just all talking about our kids, because all of our kids have gone to school together. It is the beauty that is Milan, you will find out soon. And so I just thought it was a really nice just chance to everyone sit down as community members and really talk about whatever we want. We talked about prom and getting all our kids ready and everything, so it was a nice conversation. I'm going to agree with Ms. Pryor that these budget talks cannot be, I can't overstress how important they are to our community and our schools, and there are parts of the budget that we don't necessarily talk about because they don't necessarily directly impact our budget, but they will impact our community and our children nonetheless. The first thing that comes to my mind, if I go outside of the school funding, are the Medicaid cuts. Those will greatly impact our individual community and many children in our community. And when their parents start getting more stressed about being able to provide health care to to themselves, so if their parents aren't able to access health care for themselves, and you know there may be limitations that are placed on access to their children, that's just going to make home life even more stressful. And we all know that you know those kind of things translate into behaviors at school and performance at school too. So it is not an exaggeration that just about every piece of the budget that they're talking about will have incredible impacts to our community, which then have impacts to our schools. So I encourage all of you to listen very carefully to what is really happening, not just the sound bites, but what is really happening. And find your trusted resources and make sure you're in the know so that you can be an active participant in what's going to happen to our little community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Aika. Mr. Farrell.
First, I want to welcome Brandy Ignati. Welcome.
There we go.
Yeah, that's
Perfect.
I was gonna recommend you come up with a.
You know what? That's a whole lot easier for me. Welcome, Mrs. I, to Milan, and thank you for choosing
It
our
was
district.
Mr. D, so Ms. Aika.
It was, yes.
So that works. There you
So
go.
thank you for choosing our district. I think you are, you're going into a building with great staff, great parapros, supportive group of people. You're really going to enjoy being in Milan. So thank you for choosing our community, and I wish you well in your new role. I also wanted to comment briefly on Krista, Brian, Ryan, your hard work, your efforts on the budget amendment, the proposed preliminary budget. I acknowledge, recognize, as Michelle Heike does, as the rest of the board does, the energy and time that goes into that. And I know it's very stressful. And I just want to thank you very much. We're very fortunate to have Krista in the role that you're in. And I know that Ryan, you are learning a lot as we go. So I just wanted to make sure that you got recognized for all of your efforts, so thank you. Dual enrollment paperwork and registration for those planning to enroll in the Washita Community College, that's obviously for the high school kids, is due on May 28th. The Sunshine Club is putting on an exam cram on Tuesday, June 3rd, and that'll take place 5 to 7 p.m. at the High School Media Center. And then I just want to echo what Mr. Burdette said about our high school seniors in the theater program. They are just a wonderful group of people. They work really hard. They are so accepting of other students. They are friendly, polite, just the greatest group of kids. And the performances that they put on are just spectacular. And I wish all of them the very best of luck currently and in the future. So congratulations to them on 4 great years in our theater program. Thank you.
Others. Ms. Moran.
Turn this off this time. Get that going. Okay, thank you. I will endeavor to be as brief as possible this evening, so we've already had a long meeting. I want to begin with congratulations to our band students. I too was able to attend the concert, and no, I definitely did not cry at any point. I don't know who you heard that from. But no, in all seriousness, I couldn't agree with Mr. Burdett more. The manner in which Mr. Lopez came into our program and wrapped his energy and his love around our students at a time when we're all deeply and obviously still grieving. Miss Upton was a larger than life person in every way imaginable, both in her musical expertise and just in her extreme love and care for students. And I think what I took away from hearing Mr. Lopez speak at the end of the concert and hearing our students speak so beautifully about his service is that he's embodying a lot of that same energy and spirit that Alicia brought to our band program. So I'm just incredibly grateful, and I was so proud to see all the growth. It's interesting, there's a 7-8 combined band now at the middle school, which is a new thing. And I wasn't quite sure how that would go, because the amount of growth and change that happens from 6th graders when they first pick up an instrument to 7th grade and then to 8th grade when they're preparing to move on to high school, the change and transition in that student ability at that, at each level is very different. And so I wasn't sure how the unification or the blend would go with the 7-8 band, and I was so impressed. It seems to be working really, really well. So, and I want to give congratulations to the students who were honored with the John Philip Sousa Award and the, oh, for Pete's sake, what's the, Gabe, can you help me with the other? Yeah, right, exactly. Yes. So, yes, Director's Award. Thank you. At my high school, it was the John McGehee Director's Award. Anywho, yes, congratulations to both of those honorees. I was on the edge of my seat trying to guess who it was going to be, and I had like 6 student names in my mind as to who it could have been. So, yeah, very deserving. I want to add congratulations to all of our Milan graduates, our young adult program graduates, our adult education graduates, our FCI graduates, and then, of course, our MHS class of 2025. These students would have been my 6th grade students in the 18-19 school year. So I'm very much looking forward to shaking all of your hands at graduation, and just, yeah, if some of you get bear hugged, I apologize in advance. It might happen. I want to additionally thank Krista and the entire school finance team, Ryan, for all of your work at the budget. It, as Mr. Farrow stated, is a tremendous lift, especially when our legislative bodies don't make it any easier or clearer for you to do your jobs. And I really appreciate the education that you provide to this board, because it really helps me to determine the ways in which I direct my advocacy efforts from where I sit here on this board. So thank you truly for all that you do. It's no easy task, and we're going to keep on trucking. The District Communication Committee, they're going to present to us on the 2nd June meeting, but I did want to take just a brief moment to thank them, as last night was their final meeting of the school year and kind of the culminating meeting of that committee as it prepares to move forward into whatever its next iteration might look like. So I just wanted to say a brief thank you. I'll say it again to them when they come to the June meeting, but I really appreciate the members have rotated in and out. As you know, the committee has changed and evolved, and people's lives have impacted their ability to serve in that role, but it's a wholly volunteer role. And it's a Monday night, so everybody's, feeling the Mondays. But I just really have appreciated their commitment to this district, and I think that I want to thank Mr. Gearbaugh for convening that committee and being brave enough to hear their feedback, which was sometimes challenging, and but always in the spirit of continuous improvement for our district and growth. So thank you again to those people. I want to thank Mr. Gearbaugh and the MASB for the recognition, the 2 award levels that I've achieved. I actually checked my transcript today, and I discovered that I'm actually at level 3 but they haven't credited it yet. There's a course missing from my transcript. And it also may have to do with the tracking because they do it on a calendar year and it has to be submitted by December of the end of the year. So there's that. But I'm on track to have completed level 3, and I'm working on the advocacy certification as well. So thank you again to the district for continuing to support our education in that way. Going up, I changed my mind in my order. 1 second. I sent an email earlier today to the board, so I just wanted to point at that briefly. I am sure that we all probably received the news from the Capitol newsletter email from Jennifer Smith and Brenda, is it Pilgrim? Is her last name? From the MASB advocacy wing. And I almost missed it because things are so busy right now, but I wanted to bring it and just lift it out to the board's attention. There were 2 very quick, easy advocacy opportunities that it's, you know, an email form that you fill out to our legislators, essentially. So that's there. But something that also caught my attention in that email that I wanted to bring to the board for just kind of thought and maybe future discussion is something else that the MASB offered was a draft resolution in opposition to Medicaid cuts, which we kind of talked about briefly. But and so I went back to our Board of Education portion of the website, and I noticed we actually have a tab for legislative resolutions that this board passes, you know, in support or opposition of things that are happening. And the last one that was put on the website anyway was in 2019, the school aid budget, presumably having to do with the pandemic. So I just am, I guess, asking, like, is that something that we could maybe consider doing more of, especially in light of all of the slings and arrows that seem to be coming at us as a district? I think that, you know, we all talk a lot about advocacy at this board, and I think each one of us individually are doing a lot of that engagement and reaching out to our legislators, attending the breakfast, et cetera. But I think my personal opinion is that it would speak even more loudly if we also went ahead and passed some, you know, they're non-binding, but right, they're legislative resolutions, things that we stand behind or oppose collectively as a board, and then we can share that with our legislators as well as a unified body. So just put that out for consideration by the group. And then finally for the community, I was going to talk about Medicaid. I'm too tired. I won't do it justice. So I'll come back to it next time. But for the community, I always like to try to give something that you can do or a resource that you can lean on. And the MASB website, so the MASB.org, which is Michigan Association of School Boards, it's our kind of statewide body. They have right on their homepage an advocacy and legislation tab. And if you click that, there's another button that's called Voter Voice, and it's the public-facing side of the MASB website, and anyone can go there to Voter Voice, and they do a really beautiful job of summarizing the things that they recommend we speak up about that impact school finance or school governance in one way or another. It also has a nice outline of the MASB's overall legislative priorities for the coming year. So if you're curious, or if you're looking for more information, or if you're looking for a very quick, easy way to send off that email to a legislator and take action on one of these items that we talk about regularly, MASB.org, advocacy and legislation, Voter Voice. Okay, and I'll leave it there tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. Others, Ms. Gutierrez.
Thank you, and I'll try to keep it brief as well, because there's a benefit of going last. Many of you have already said the things I wanted to say. It was mentioned earlier about the SEEB presentation in the Big Red Board chat the week before last, and I won't reiterate that, but I did want to share with the board and with administration that one of the parents there specifically wanted to convey their thanks for the Neurodivergent Awareness Week that turned into a month, and how meaningful that was for their family and specifically for their child who was switching buildings as they were transitioning from one building to another, to see the what's the word I'm looking for? The acknowledgement and the communication, and it was a billboard, or not a billboard, a bulletin board in particular that she had seen at the next school her child was going to, and how that made her child feel very welcome and included. And she wanted that message to be shared about how much that meant to that student. And I think that we really owe our thanks to our students, in fact, who continue to support this effort and to make sure that this is highlighted throughout our buildings. And I want to reiterate that when we talk about inclusion, we here in Milan, I think, do a tremendous job of making sure that our students do feel included, and that represents a wide variety of different groups of students. And so thank you to that parent for sharing that appreciation, and thank you to our students for continuing to support efforts to make sure that all of our students do feel included. The other, also, yes, thank you to the band concert and to the performers. I had 2 little performers on stage that night, and they've had a year of transition between Mrs. Upton and Mr. Lopez, but I appreciate everything that he has done, and just really coming in to a hard situation and really building relationships with those students. And I thought the tribute at the end was very nice. I know prom happened last weekend, and in addition to loving to look at everyone's beautiful dresses and things like that, I wanted to mention that we were out to dinner at one of the restaurants in town the night of prom, and there were several students in the restaurant who were on their way to prom, and they were just so kind and respectful to the staff, to the other patrons. It was just really nice to see our students out in our community having a wonderful time and representing our district really well. So to those students, thank you, and I hope they had a wonderful night. Yes, all of the events coming up with graduation, certainly congratulations to all of our graduates, regardless of what graduation you're going to be at. Congratulations to our 8th graders who are going to go up to high school. I think the one that Mr. Gearbaugh didn't mention was the 5th grade recognition, which is also happening. Remember, these are the students who won't have that move from Simons to the middle school at 5th grade because they made that at 4th grade. So there will be a recognition of those students also on June 5th at 1:30 in the afternoon. Okay. I would like to go back to the budget, and I know the way these conversations move through our community, and I just want to be crystal clear that the tight budget that we are working with right now is not at the fault of our district spending more money than we can or should be. If you look at the budget, we are losing a revenue of $3.6 million. And the next thing that also commonly gets attributed to loss of revenue is loss of students. And so, as Mrs. Hendricks shared, the budget reflects a decrease of 38 students, and based upon the foundation allowance for those students, that is a mere loss of $365,000, right, based on the per pupil allowance. All that to say that the declining enrollment of our district, which is often used as a conversation topic of some of our tightness with budgets, is surely a very small piece of this $3.6 million loss in revenue. And so I want to be clear with the community that this is not going to be solved by bringing more students into the district, retaining the students we have. Yes, those are things that are on all of our minds, but to make up a difference of $3.6 million of lost revenue is going to require our state legislature to be highly supportive, at least to the level that they have been, of public school education. And so I know we've all talked about this all night, but looking at those numbers in perspective and knowing what our community will often raise as some of the questions, I want to mitigate some of those concerns, in that this is not about the loss of 38 students that is projected. This is truly a major change in our state funding that is projected. Along those lines, thank you, Krista, Ryan, and Brian for all of the work on this budget. I know this is a constant conversation, and I really appreciate the attention to detail on this. I'd like to welcome Mrs. I to the district. Paddock is a special place in so many of our hearts and is the first introduction to Milan area schools for so many families. It was why we moved as a family to Milan. We actually moved right across the street, so we'll be neighbors. But it is a really special place, and I think that's what you'll continue to hear from our families is what a special place it is and how it is that first welcome to the district for our youngest learners and families. And so we're really excited to have you there, and I'm sure that you will love being there because it's really a wonderful place. Thank you to all of our seniors in all of the different events that they participate in, but especially thank you, Mr. Burdette, for the seniors. I know that thanking the seniors in the theater program have really served as great representatives and role models for many of the younger theater students in our schools. Over the years, we've seen how wonderful our middle school theater program has really grown into with some fantastic shows, a fantastic supportive environment. And I know that those students are looking up to our high school students. They go to their shows, they help out in the concession stand with them. And I just really appreciate that leadership that those students have provided. And so thank you to all of them. I think that's, last thing, I would like to request that board members are able to paint a parking spot as well. I think this is the coolest idea I've ever heard of, and that would be super fun. So if you will take our $20, I'd be happy to. So that's everything. Congratulations to all of our seniors.
All right. I will not keep it brief. I do have a lot of thank yous as well. I want to thank Ms. Virginia Heike for being here and the updates. I sincerely appreciate it. Congratulations to Ms. Murray and Ms. Pryor on your awards. I appreciate your dedication to continuing education. I know Mr. Burdette will be awarded next year for his education, and many of us as well for the continuing things that we do with MESB. I do want to thank Ms. Gutierrez and Ms. Pryor for serving as our delegates for the WISD vote in their roles at WISD and attending the legislative breakfast. And then I wanted to go through the committees of the board because the committees of the board have been doing quite a bit of work. And I just want to make sure that most people are aware of that. Definitely the Finance Committee, Ms. Heike, Mr. Burdette, and Mr. Farrow. They always have questions for Ms. Hendricks, and I appreciate that follow-up and the transparency with our budget and some of the reasons that when these things are presented to us, we are confident in the work that Mr. Gearbaugh, Mr. McMahon, and Ms. Hendricks do. So, personnel and leadership, which is myself, Mr. Farrow, and Ms. Gutierrez, we've been working on the superintendent contract, so we'll be hearing in regards to that soon. So I appreciate the work that's being done there. Ms. Murray talked about the communications committee. So that's Ms. Murray, myself, and Mr. Burdette. Like she said, we had their final meeting. They have put together quite a professional product to present to us at the second June meeting. So I definitely look forward to you folks seeing that. So I'm excited about that. Learning environment and care, learning environment and culture, also our policy committee. I know Ms. Pryor has been working on a lot of the policy updates along with Ms. Heike and Ms. Murray. We are looking to adopt those policies soon as we transition from Neola to Troon, so I appreciate the work that's being done with that. And then finally, academics and programs, which is Ms. Gutierrez, Ms. Pryor, and myself. also that do the scholarships. And senior night is a special night, and I appreciate you folks presenting there and representing us, and honoring those kids. It's going to be a special night for sure. I plan to attend the adult ed graduation tomorrow evening in lieu of that. And then finally, Mrs. I. Yes, thank you. Thank you for choosing Milan. We're very excited to have you. And it reminds me of Miss Teetons, who I want to thank as well. I mean, she's always somebody that that we come to for, Mr. Gearbaugh asks her, and she's always says yes. She says yes to Milan, and she helps out. And like everybody has said, you'll come to understand what that means here. And I appreciate Miss Teetons and what she's done to help bridge in between Mr. DeSarbo and Mrs. I. So, and then again, just to all of our students, congratulations on their celebrations, and thank you to all of our staff for making that happen. I know we're in the final run. It sometimes can get a little, I don't know what's the best, squealy. I don't, frenzied. Yeah, there's just a lot going on. It's crazy. There we go. There's a good. But just appreciate all of our staff, the efforts of our staff to harness that energy. So we look forward to all these celebrations. Anything further, Ms. Heike?
I'm sorry to double dip. This will be really quick. But something Ms. Gutierrez said about the budget and combating misinformation, before it gets out there, the $3+ million deficit is not a result of this misinformation about our falling test scores either. So if you see that out on Facebook, that's also not true.
Any others? All right, this meeting's adjourned at 9:23 p.m. Drive home safely.